For the first time since the full-scale invasion, US President Donald Trump has called Russia the aggressor in the war against Ukraine. Speaking to reporters the day before, he said that 8,000 people had died in the war over the course of a week. More from the Russian side, because literally when you are the aggressor, you lose more. Trump reiterated his call for NATO countries to stop buying Russian oil. He said that then, together, they would be able to put pressure on Putin. Later, he expanded his call to not buy anything from Russia, whether it's liquefied gas or cigarettes. End of quote. The US president published his letter urging NATO not to buy Russian oil and to impose additional tariffs on China last weekend. He says some have already responded to him. He claims that alliance partners will not deny that he is right. But for now, the discussions are ongoing.
They are not doing the job.
They are not doing their job. NATO needs to unite. Europe needs to unite and do it. Listen, Europe, they are my friends, but they are buying oil from Russia. So we can't be expected to be the only ones acting at full strength. And Europe is buying oil from Russia. I don't want them to buy oil. And the sanctions that have already been imposed are not tough enough. I'm ready to impose sanctions, but they will also have to strengthen their sanctions in line with what I'm doing.
Meanwhile, let's turn our attention to the bastion of democracy, our main strategic partner, the United States. President Trump's reaction to the incursion of Russian drones into Poland has clearly unsettled European capitals, according to Reuters. There they took note of Trump's refusal to publicly call on Moscow to answer for the incident. And now many NATO members are already questioning his willingness to defend them in the event of a real Russian attack. And at the end of the week, Trump also put forward conditions for NATO and the EU, under which he would supposedly be willing to impose serious sanctions against the Kremlin. TSN's own correspondent in Washington, Olga Koshelenko, has the latest news. She is joining us live. Olga, hello. So, what are these conditions, how many are there, and how realistic is it that they could be fulfilled? Or is this just a way to wash his hands of the situation when all talks with Putin are failing?
Yes, Ala. Yesterday, Trump made a post on Truth Social that some media outlets here even called an ultimatum. In it, Trump addresses not even the European Union, which is important, but NATO, with a proposal to stop buying Russian energy resources. Because after China and India, which are the top two buyers of Russian oil products, Turkey is in third place. Turkey is a NATO member and a major trading partner of Russia. And the fourth and fifth places are also held by Russia's friends and not strangers to Trump, Hungary and Slovakia. Trump also proposes in this open letter to impose high trade tariffs on China. Let's listen to the main points from his address to NATO.
As you know, NATO's desire for victory was far less than 100%, and the purchase of Russian oil by some countries was shocking. This significantly weakens your negotiating position and bargaining power with respect to Russia. In any case, I am ready to begin whenever you are ready. Just let me know when. I believe that this, as well as NATO, as a group imposing tariffs on China ranging from 50 to 100%, which would be completely lifted after the end of Russia's war with Ukraine, would also greatly help to end this deadly but senseless war.
It is noteworthy that this letter did not appear out of nowhere, but followed this week's visit to Washington by a delegation of high-ranking European officials who, according to CNN, met here both with Trump himself and with officials at lower levels of government. Trump is finally on our side. An EU official shared this optimistic statement with Politico on condition of anonymity. And by the way, the article itself is titled, "Trump Finally Wants to Put Pressure on Russia." Now comes the hardest part. The difficulty, according to EU officials who are speaking here on condition of anonymity, lies in the difference in approaches. The EU and the United States have different views. Europe is seeking formal sanctions specifically against Russia and is ready to go through with it. But the United States wants to impose tariffs against China as a major trading partner of the European Union. But that's not in their interests. By the way, Trump did not mention India in his post on Truth Social, which I just talked about, because right now the EU is moving closer to a major trade agreement with India, and it doesn't look like they're ready to give that up.
This is economically and politically impossible for the EU. Such a move would contradict the core principles of the EU, especially after the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, reiterated her opposition to tariffs, insisting that tariffs are taxes on domestic consumers. Imposing tariffs on India, with whom Brussels is nearing a major trade agreement, and on China, on which its open economy heavily depends, would be tantamount to colossal acts of self-harm.
As for the purchase of Russian oil by Turkey, as well as primarily by Hungary, it also does not seem that they are ready or will be ready to give it up. Other European Union countries have already significantly reduced their purchases. Europe also consumes Russian liquefied natural gas. Trump did not mention this in his post referenced above. However, American media report that this week he suggested Europe should also give up this type of energy resource and replace it with American liquefied natural gas. There has not yet been a formal response from the EU to Trump's ultimatum. A spokesperson for the European Commission said that negotiations are ongoing in this manner. However, Trump is flying to the United Kingdom next week, and perhaps the negotiations can continue there as well. Hello.
And against the backdrop of the Russian-Belarusian military exercises, the Trump-Lukashenko line is interesting, lifting sanctions from the Belarusian airline, the release of prisoners, and cufflinks from Trump featuring the White House. How do people in the States explain this bouquet of mutual-friendly gestures?
Hello, that's a very interesting question. The way the United States is currently handling the Belarusian dictator can no longer go unnoticed. Trump himself spoke with Lukashenko on the phone. He sent his special representative to him with various gifts, which you just mentioned. These included a letter personally signed by Trump and cufflinks featuring the White House. By the way, you can buy such cufflinks at the White House souvenir shop. Really nothing special, but it pleased Lukashenko. As well as the lifting of sanctions against Russia and against the Belarusian company Belavia, which the United States also implemented this week. As experts here say, this is primarily an opportunity for Lukashenko to buy spare parts for his plane, so it's also a gift to Putin's junior partner. The question is, why do Trump and the United States need this? Formally, we see that Lukashenko has already released his political prisoners twice, those who have languished in Belarusian prisons since the mass protests of 2020. And although Trump also mentions this publicly, there is no reason to believe that Belarusian citizens hold any special value for the United States. Among the interesting theories I've heard here, there is one that says the United States is trying to use its flirtation with Lukashenko to separate him from Putin and to show how beneficial it is to make deals with America. The idea is that Lukashenko trades his political prisoners and gains benefits from it. So, do you think this example will teach Putin anything?
Well, that's almost a rhetorical question, but we'll see. And finally, one more question about the high-profile murders in the States and the escalating confrontation between Republicans and Democrats. To what extent can this domestic issue knock Trump off the international agenda? The video of the murder of the Ukrainian woman, as it turned out, was released much later after the tragedy. Is this a coincidence or a specific plan? What does the toothy American press say about this?
Yes, hello. The murder of 23-year-old Irina Zarutska took place back on August 22nd. But the surveillance footage from the train where the murder actually happened was released only 2 weeks later. In the footage, by the way, Zarutska sat in the train car in front of the black man, De Carlos Brown. They had no contact, there was no interaction at all. But at some point, he suddenly got up and stabbed her 3 times. Very soon after, the girl lost consciousness and died. The attacker has been arrested. He is mentally ill and claims that he has a chip in his brain and that the Ukrainian woman he killed supposedly knew all his thoughts. This story really gained publicity when the President of the United States took an interest in it. That's when the video was released. Trump had just declared war on street crime in America, mostly in cities governed by his Democratic opponents, such as Washington and Chicago. So Zarutska became something of a symbol of this fight. This wave was somewhat dampened by another high-profile murder, this time a political one. A close associate of Trump, MAGA blogger Charlie Kirk, was shot dead. He was shot right in the middle of a public speech in front of students in Utah. Among the motives of the 22-year-old man who allegedly committed this crime, who was detained and is accused of murder, were politics and disagreement with the blogger's views. On the shotgun that was found as the weapon of the crime, it was allegedly engraved with, "Hey fascists, catch this." And these two very different crimes have taken on significant political resonance in the United States. The internal confrontation in the country is truly palpable. And a new political season is beginning. Next year, there will be midterm elections for control of Congress, which could change a lot in the internal political landscape. After all, both chambers of Congress are currently controlled by the Republicans. So it seems that the domestic agenda will take up a significant portion of Trump's attention. Hello.
Thank you, Olga. TSN's own correspondent in the United States, Olga Koshelenko, has taken the political temperature in Washington. And as we can see, there really is a reason for us and the Europeans to be concerned. Thank you.